Howdy folks, welcome to another beautiful day out here in Vancouver. I'm actually on my way to the US border to go and pick up some mail and some parcels we ordered off of eBay. So I thought I'll do a quick video and just talk about our immigration experience up to now. You know, one of the things that I've realized speaking to a lot of people that's immigrated both to Canada and other places around the world, some of my friends, is that you know, it's different for everybody, definitely, but there are a few threats. There are a few things that you got to keep in mind before you embark on your immigration journey, and those things, you know, is important. So I thought what I'll do is I'll cover that. I'm not going to do this in one shoot because I am driving. So in other words, you know, when I have to focus, I'm going to stop recording and I'll pick it up again. But anyway, so let's start off. The first thing I want to say about immigration is that immigrating is hard. Everybody that's done it will tell it to you. And it's not, you might think, you know, people go back and, oh yeah, it's so nice, you moved to Canada, you have living the good life. Trust me, it is a hard journey. I just spoke to a friend of mine in this week that finally got his green card after, I don't know, 5-6 years. And the problem with that is, it's the uncertainty. Because the thing is, while you are on this journey, remember, you're pulling the plug where you are. In South Africa, you uprooting yourself. A lot of people come to Canada on a work permit that they then convert into permanent residency. And even if you come through on a permanent residency, it's a little bit easier, the journey, because you know that you are there. But for the work permit people, hey, you pick up, you uproot yourself, you get rid of all your stuff, you sell everything that you have in your home country, and then you leave and you come across to Canada, and then you are sitting here and you have that doubt in your mind that this is going to work out. Is this going to be where I am? When you're on a work permit and you're trying that pathway to get into the country, you've got the added worry that, hey, am I actually going to make it? Can you imagine picking up all of your crap back home and then moving to Canada, and then after 2 years having to go all the way back there? You know, it's a huge uprootment. We might not think it, but our lives where we live is very settled, and we have a lot of things that, you know, we know how it works. It just like it's all in place. And when you move across the world, you have nothing in place. It all starts afresh. So I think uncertainty is a big one. There's this mate of mine that moved to the US that finally got his green card. He's very happy, and he says he's so happy that they finally got their green cards approved, him and his family, and they're happy. He's also got 2 kids. But if he had known what he knows now about the journey, he probably would not have started it. And that's a fact. I think a lot of people think about it like that. Well, especially after the first year, it's like a cyclical thing. You do change later on. You know, I speak to a lot of people that's been here for 10 years or 5, 10, 15 years. People that's been here longer. I mean, they're Canadians. They're happy. They've rebuilt their little support structure in Canada, and then people are happy again. I mean, let's face it, as humans, that's what we do. We need to have a little bit of structure, and we need to have a little bit of support, and we need to know what's going on and where we are. Uncertainty is a big issue. Okay, so let's talk about some of the other things that are hard about the immigration journey, apart from the uncertainty. Obviously, friends and family. I mean, I've spoken about that so many times. Let's just touch on it again. Friends and family, missing your friends and family is hard. We are halfway around the world, on the other side of the world. We are always out of sync. When it's morning here, it's evening there. When it's evening here, it's morning there. So we are always out of sync, you know. I try and phone my mates on a Saturday morning. It's Saturday evening for them. They already had a few glasses of wine or a few beers. We're just not on the same vibe. It's hard. It's hard to communicate with people back home. And we do video calls, but hey, let's face it. I mean, we all know that a video call is not the same as standing around a braai and being there in person. So, yeah, that's very hard. As far as family goes, same thing. You know, on the one hand, it's hard when you miss your family, but the hardest parts of that is obviously when things go wrong, you know, or when there's those moments, significant moments, that's when it's the hardest. I haven't had any of those per se on my side of the family, but I mean, Belinda's mom passed away in January in 2022, and we were on this side of the world. There's nothing you can do. You can't just quickly pop over and go give grandpa a hug and be there for them and help with the organization and everything. You're just too far away. That's the problem. And a similar thing, her sister's son drowned in the ocean a couple of months ago, a month or two ago. He was in his 30s, had a family, and they went swimming, and he drowned in the ocean. It's just one of those things. And once again, you know how much it hurts, but you can't be there. You can send messages and texts and be like, hey, we're with you and we're thinking about you. But in situations like that, that's when family need to be together and help each other out. And then, of course, now lately, her dad, he's 91. He needs to go into a home, and he's just been in hospital for a couple of weeks. It's not easy. That's the hard part. If you still have family back in South Africa, especially aging parents, that's the hard part. Very, very hard. Although, having said that, sometimes it's also the good part. When you have family back in South Africa and you're on this side of the world, you get left out of the family politics, or you can just wash your hands and go, look, sorry, I'm not involved, I'm not there, I can't do anything. I mean, we all have family. We all know that often sometimes there are some family politics and brothers fight and things like that. Luckily, you're far away from that. So that's the one cool thing about being on this side. Okay, another hard thing that a lot of people struggle with. All right, so now let's talk about another hard thing that a lot of people struggle with when they come to Canada or when they immigrate. I suppose anywhere across the world really is finding friends and setting up your new support structure. It's like the guy from Netflix, Foster, said to me the other day, is when you move away from your family and friends on the other side of the world, you got to come and build yourself a new family over here. You got to find new friends, and oftentimes people struggle with that, especially in Vancouver. I feel like it's harder here. Look, we've lived in the US for a while, and we've lived in other places as well, and it's just like it seems that it was a little easier over there. Vancouver, I can't speak for the rest of Canada. Vancouver does seem to be a little harder. Something that I have also noticed in Vancouver is that it's harder to make friends across the cultural divides, or friends of other cultures. When we were in the US, it was there wasn't much of a choice. You were the South African and the rest were US, so you kind of have to make friends with the US folks. That's just the way it is. And they were also much more opener, so people assimilated into the communities much easier. Whereas I think in Canada or in Vancouver, from my experience, you have a lot of immigrants. So it's almost easier for people to just gravitate towards people from their own culture. And I don't think that's exactly a good thing. And I'm also definitely guilty of that. We all do that. It's like there are a lot of South Africans, so I can easily connect with other South Africans and build a South African friend group. And what happens is when you do that, you reinforce your habits and your culture and your structure and everything, which is good. It's good on one side of the coin. It makes you feel more comfortable and you settle in quicker. But at the same time, it also maybe stops you from, integrating into the rest of the society. And I'm not just saying it's the South Africans, it's like everybody. I mean, you can definitely see the groups over here. You've got the Persians and you've got the Indians, and the Indians, you actually have the different castes of Indians also that hang out together, and you've got the Canadians and you've got the Russians, and there's definitely cliques of groups. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not like people are nasty or look down on each other or argue with each other or stuff like that. No, well, not from my experience. But you can see that people do gravitate to other people of their culture. And I suppose it's just human nature, you know, it's who we are. We tend to gravitate to people that are the same as us. It's just human. So that's definitely something. Now, let's get back to making friends. Making friends is hard, but you have to just do it. That's the bottom line. You just have to get out of your shell and go and find those people. And there's lots of places to find them. I mean, there's lots of activities. I say we gravitate towards people of our own culture, but we also gravitate towards people with the same pastimes or hobbies, or the same, you know, that do the same things as us. So join a church, go to church. You're going to find friends there if you're a church goer. Go play rugby. I know people that met people through the rugby clubs. There's lots of rugby clubs. There's lots of sport clubs. There's lots of things going on. And if you land here and you want to make friends, you just got to get out there and make friends. Yes, you're not going to find your perfect friends on on the first go, but what do they say? You've got to kiss a few frogs before you find the prince, or what's the saying? But anyway, the bottom line is you just got to go out there and go and do it. It is what it is. You just, I found for us, it's just very, very easy to fall into this rut where we sit in front of the TV every night and we don't actually go out and do things. And it's something that I've been trying to fight, but it's just not that easy. Although then again, for us, maybe, you know, we are not that socially inclined. We never have been. We had a few events that we used to go to. In South Africa, we used to go play pool every Friday evening at a place called Ball Breakers in Joburg. And that was a good bunch of fun. It's a group of friends that always goes there, and we play pool. And we love playing pool and drinking tequila. But the beauty of Ball Breakers was also, it was also easier to meet people there, because it was, the pool clubs in South Africa is different. I mean, we used to love that. It's just like, it's an open table, so you can challenge people. You know, it's a coin operated table. So the guy with the next coin plays the next game. So anybody can walk up to your table and come challenge you for a game. And then that way you meet people, and it's competition and it's fun. Whereas over here, the pool clubs, yeah, it kind of sucks, I must say. You go there and you basically book a table and you pay by time for the table. So there's not a lot of cross-playing and competition. Well, anyway, I haven't found any yet. I haven't found a Ball Breakers equivalent in Canada yet, which is sad, because I used to love playing pool and I used to love going on Friday nights to do that. But another thing I missed from South Africa was we used to play poker once a month. We had a group of mates that would get together. None of us professional poker players. It's just a group of mates, and we would have a 20-person poker competition, and that was so much fun. I got to be honest, sometimes we just like drank more than played poker, but it was just fun. You know, it's like every once a month on the last Friday of the month, we would all get together at this one guy's house, set up the game and play poker and talk crap and drink tequila. And it's the once a month that we see these guys. It wasn't our normal friend group. It was more of like a once a month friend group, which was cool. Anyway, all right, so I kind of digress. I think the point I'm trying to make is you got to go find things to do, and that's how you're going to assimilate into the local society, and that's how you're going to make your friends. You're not going to make your friends by sitting at home and watching Netflix. It's just not going to happen that way. And whatever you like, that's what you got to do. You got to stick to your hobbies and go find other people that's the same as you. All right, so the next thing you got to know about Canada is that when you move to Canada, Canada is a very liberal and left-leaning country as far as politics go. Well, most of it. Alberta, maybe not so much, but definitely Canada, in some people's eyes, I guess, are almost leaning to a very socialist-leaning country. And you got to know that that is what you are coming to. I'm not going to go too deep into it. A lot of the policies are amazing, and that's what makes Canada a brilliant place. Some of it, I think, is pushed a little bit too far. I mean, the reality is that rights and human rights and things like that, I agree that we all have rights, and everybody's rights should be protected. But unfortunately, and I think that's kind of one of the problems of the world these days, is that some people's rights, you can't have the right to steal and the right to keep your own stuff. There are some rights that's not always 100% connected with each other. So there are things that are concerning. Me being a Gen Xer and that grew up in a conservative household, there are obviously things that you're going to struggle with if that's you. Some of it, like this gender affirmation theory in school and things like that, it's hard. I mean, some of the situations, like in Canada, just as an example, the other day there was there was a story where there was a women's weightlifting contest, and then there was this person that identifies as a woman that came to the contest, but it used to be a man that I now identifies as a woman that came to the contest and actually started trash talking the woman because they're so weak, they can't bench press as much and stuff like that. And things like that was just not. It's hard to get to align with that. Not that that person doesn't have the right to be who he wants to be. If he wants to be a woman and he feels like he's a woman, who am I to disagree? I mean, I get it. It's your right. But at the same time, should he be competing in the women's weightlifting contest? Actually, the crazy thing about that specific contest, if I remember correctly, was that one of the women that competed, their coach was just a straightforward guy, then also said, okay, well, if he's going to compete because he identifies as a woman, I'm also going to compete. Now, I mean, this guy is just a dude. He was like, yeah, so from today, I'm also identifying as a woman. He entered the contest and he won the contest, and he actually beat this other person. So it's just, I think there's still a little bit of a balance that needs to be found. You can't have your cake and eat it all the time, as they say. I'm not going to go too much deeper into that. Just understand that that is what you're going to be dealing with. When you come to Canada, you are going to be asked about your pronouns, and everybody is going to tell you their pronouns. When you go to a meeting, I've been to places, and then they go, well, can we go around the room, and everybody can tell you their pronouns. So who are you? Are you a him, a her, a they, a them? There's even like furries, like kids that identify as animals. Anyway, so that's one of the things that might be an issue to get your head around. And then, and just know that that's happening. That is what is happening over here. I mean, I think a lot of people struggle with that, to the point where we got the kids' report cards the other day, and the kids' report cards, all the teachers, the report card says, Connor is a great student. They are always active in class. So Connor definitely doesn't identify as a they, but I think what's happening is the teachers have gotten to the point where it's so hard to remember what everybody identifies as, that they are just using they now as the general pronoun. I mean, which is like mind-blowing. And your kids are gonna, if you have kids in school, they are going to be exposed to all of that. Understand that. Another thing that you got to know is when you come here and you go to an event, or you go to really many places, you are going to say thank you to the First Nations for being on their land. I mean, it is just the way it is. Is it right? Is it wrong? I'm not going to go into that. And I don't expect anybody to please comment on that. This is not what the video is about. The video is about understanding that when you immigrate to Canada, that is what you are going to see. It is just the way it is. Canada is still an amazing place. All right, another thing we need to discuss is cost of living in Canada. And that is a concern for lots of immigrants. Really, it's a concern, and it's also a problem for lots of immigrants. You know, the cost of living in Canada is extremely high. It's just shot up in the last few years. It's always been kind of high-ish, but it's really gone out of proportion over the last few years after COVID, with all the stimulus that was pumped into the economy and the inflation that skyrocketed. And I don't think it's just a Canada problem. I think it's just throughout the world. I mean, when we were back in South Africa, things are just as expensive there. In Canada, we have the added thing, though, that we are dealing with the housing bubble or the housing prices, and the accommodation it's way out of sync with what it should be. I mean, it's like we will probably never be able to buy a house in Canada. I mean, right now, I think in order to buy the median little house in Vancouver, and this is not the fancy place, this is just the average house in Vancouver, 2-bedroom or something like that, apartment, I think you need to put down like a $280,000 or $280,000 deposit, and you need to earn like $268,000 a year just to afford that, just to qualify to get a bond, because the interest rates have now gone up as well. So it is unaffordable. Rents are through the roof. I saw statistics the other day that said that a lot of families in Canada are now spending, I think it was over 50% of their monthly income on rent. It's not sustainable. Look, they're doing a lot to try and mitigate that. Both the provincial governments and the federal government. But it is a little bit laughable on the one hand, because they're doing a lot to try and mitigate that. But on the other hand, they are the ones that's mostly responsible for it as well. Now, why is house prices so extreme in Canada, and why is it stuck up there? I would say mainly because of, well, there's two main reasons. Obviously, there's the immigration. On the one hand, Canada is bringing in a lot of people. They've really accelerated immigration, which is great for us immigrants, because, you know, it allows us to come to Canada and come find a better life over here. But at the same time, if you want to bring in that many people, you do need to make space for them, I suppose. And that hasn't been happening. In Canada, there hasn't been enough new homes built. When you think about it this way, if you bring in 1 million immigrants a year, that means just in order to accommodate those guys coming into the country. Now, let's say on average, I mean, the immigrants are definitely not all families of 4. I would suppose most of them are families of 2 or 3, you know, but say, hey, let's work on an average that every immigrant is 4 as a family that coming in. That means you need to put 250,000 extra dwellings a year in the country and make it available to those immigrants, just to keep it even. And that's not happening at the moment, purely because of all of the, there's a lot of red tape and things like that. And then, of course, the other reason why I say the government is very responsible for the cost of housing is that, I'm speaking under correction, but I think they said the other day that 30% of the cost of a new building or a new property, 30 or 32% of that is all government fees. Those are taxes, not just one tax, it's taxes from the provincial government and connection fees and road levies, and it's all of these costs that the government piles onto the actual building of new properties. So they are part of the problem. You know, the builder, if he builds a house for $1 million, $300,000 of that goes to the government in the form of different taxes and whatever else. So that's a little bit nuts. I mean, that does help make the problem worse. And then, of course, the provincial governments, you know, the planning committees and things. It's just a lot of red tape. It's just a lot of red tape. They are not expediting things like they should or like they could. Although, like I said, they are working on it. They're trying to make it better. So touch wood. Let's hope it starts working out and they get it right and they solve the problem. Problem is, there's already a huge backlog that needs to be first caught up before things can start normalizing. Of course, then some of the other things that influence the cost of living in Canada, the Canadian carbon tax, which is something that it just kind of blows my mind to a certain extent. It's just, I get it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not a climate denier. I'm not saying that we shouldn't look after the earth better. I'm just saying that I'm not 100% convinced that this carbon tax is making it work. The only thing it does is it's putting an enormous amount of financial pressure on, like, all Canadians, really. So what the carbon tax is, from what I can ascertain is, or I understand, is that the Canadian government, to try and make its climate targets, decided to add this extra tax on everything that's got fossil fuels. So in other words, fuel, gas, heating oil, all of these things, they add this additional tax on. And that tax is just going up. They want to quadruple it now, as far as I understand, in the near future. And then that money was supposed to be used to build clean energy projects and stuff like that, and to actually lower the carbon emissions. Now, the problem with that is multiple. Number one, I don't think that the money is getting used in the right way. It's just another tax, and it's just hurting Canadians. The second thing is that you got to understand is that, and I mean, maybe I'm just silly, but my logic tells me that climate has been changing forever. I mean, the same scientists that tell me that we are breaking the planet tells me that there was an ice age and a warm age, and there was like oceans where mountains are right now used to be oceans. You know, so basically what I'm trying to say is the earth changes. It has, ever since it started. It would warm up, it would cool down, it would, like, you know, earthquakes, volcanoes, stuff moves. I mean, it's well documented in the history of time. Are we accelerating climate change or making it warmer? Oh yeah, I'm sure it can be. Science is there, and the scientists say that. Can we stop doing that? I think that's where I have the biggest problem. I mean, it's all fine and well to say, oh yeah, cut your emissions, but unless everybody on the planet cuts their emissions, I don't think it's going to make a difference. I mean, there's no point in Canada cutting their emissions to zero, but Africa upping their emissions by 100% or whatever. Or, you know, some of the things are just not logically sound, if you ask me. Like, you have Canadians that are now importing stuff from China because with the carbon taxes and the extra costs over here, it's too expensive, so now we buy it from China, where they don't care. They pump the emissions into the air. So a Canadian company cannot pump the emissions into the air and the Canadian company suffers because China, who's not under the same control, they can, and they make the stuff and they send it here. I mean, people are like that. They're just going to find a different place to buy stuff. Anyway, so there's a very big green agenda. A lot of it I agree with. I mean, we should not be polluting. We should find ways to do it better. Some of it I don't agree with. I don't think the carbon tax works. I don't think that's a great idea. But anyway, yeah. So that does add to the cost of living, understand it. There is a cost of living issue in Canada. It's expensive. But I also feel like it's something that will be sorted. It's something that will clear itself out. You know, at the end of the day, the way I see things, life is cyclical. You know, it moves this way, that way, this way, that way. Unfortunately, the only way for us to find the best way is to test the ways that doesn't work. So we'll see. All right, so I'm at the US border. I'm going to switch off first. All right, so just back from the US, literally took me 25 minutes going through the border, picking up the stuff and back through the border. So now I'm back on the way heading home. So now let's talk about the weather. The weather is obviously something that some people struggle with. Like my mom, for instance, she's like, I'm not going there, it's too cold. My sister, it's too cold. You know, the weather, yes, it's very different. I mean, from South Africa, where it was very hot and sunny and beautiful and stuff like that, to where here it's cold and rainy and snowy and you know, it's different. It's very, very different. But we love it. I mean, the reality is that yes, it's cold, but it's not that cold. And the beauty of it all is that you've got central heating, so your house is warm. You've got heating in your car, so your car is warm. You've got warm clothes, you layer up, you love it. Actually, to be quite honest, last time I was in South Africa, not in August, the time before that, we were there in December. And it was just too much. It was just too hot, you know. It was like you couldn't sleep at night, and we had fans on and things like that. But it was just too hot. And the thing is, you can't do anything about heat. You can do a lot about cold. So for us, the weather is not a problem. We actually enjoy it. I actually enjoy the weather, especially since I run occasionally and I heat up very quickly. And Connor, my son, has the same problem. He heats up very quickly. So for us, it's actually really nice that it's cold and cool. So yeah, weather is not a big problem. What is a little bit of an issue, I guess, is the short days. In winter, the days get really short and it gets dark and gloomy. I mean, right now it's middle of the day and the camera kind of obviously has a low light camera, so it doesn't show you that, but it's darkish. It's dark and gloomy and you don't see the sun that often. And that, you know, that is a little bit of an issue, not much. It's very, very small, really. What we do is we take vitamin D, because that is one of the problems that people in the northern hemisphere have, is because they don't get so much sun. They sometimes have a vitamin D deficiency, so we take some vitamin D. And then the other thing is, you know, the sun rises at like 8 o'clock in the morning and it sets at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon in the middle of winter. And that screws with my mind a little bit still, but I'll get used to it. You know, it just does. It's just like your day is short. When it starts getting dark, I want to start relaxing and chilling. And some of the days are super long, so you're busy and you're doing stuff until late. But in winter, it's just not the same. So yeah, that takes a little bit of getting used to. But once again, it's just also, you've got to just force yourself to go and do stuff. You know, don't go, oh, the sun's down, so now I'm going to sit and watch Netflix. It's 4:30 in the afternoon. Be like, okay, I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm going to go out and do something. There's plenty to do. So yeah, weather is not a major issue, honestly. Anyway, not for us. So now let's talk about some of the cool things in Canada. Firstly, safety and security. You know, I think that's, like I've said many times before, that's our main thing. Safety and security, and I still maintain it is just so amazing to live in a country where the rule of law to a certain extent still applies. You know, yes, it's got its problems. There's a significant problem at the moment with, so what's happening is you have homeless people and mentally disturbed people or drug addicts that are roaming the streets, and I think there's 40 or so of them, 43 of them that's been arrested 6,000 times over the last 7 years for crimes. Now these crimes, some of them are serious, some of them are just like breaking and entering and stealing stuff at stores, but some of them are assaults. And there's one guy that's been arrested for a whole bunch of assaults, and there's still a little bit of an issue with the legal system there, because this guy's nuts. So he's cruising around the street and then he'll just randomly attack people. They load him, they take him to jail, but they never keep him, because the Canadian law has this issue that for bail applications, the prosecutor has to prove that the criminal is going to do the offense again if he wants him to be kept in jail. And if he cannot prove that, the guy gets bail. Now, that is currently a big issue in the Canadian legal system, and they are busy addressing that as well, because what happens is with like some of these guys, this guy specifically, is how do you prove that he's going to do it again? Yes, he's done it the last 40 times that you set him free. He has gone out and committed a similar crime, but you can't prove that he's going to do it again, because he just says he won't, and then the judge has to set him free and let him go. So there's a problem with that. I think they're busy changing the law, actually. The provinces have petitioned the federal government to change the law to say that if it's a repeat criminal, he has to prove that he won't do it again, which is, you know, just as impossible as to prove that he would do it again. But the bottom line is, then the guy would be reprimanded, and it might not be in jail, it might be in some sort of home where they can help him treat his addiction and stuff like that. But apart from that, Canada is safe. Very, very safe. You know, petty crime, yes, we had a bicycle stolen at the house. You have, once again, it's the same little group of people. And when I say a small group of people, it's not millions of them. I mean, there's like a couple of hundred, maybe 1,000 homeless people that are roving around the city that fall in that category. I mean, and they're not just homeless people. These are people that are homeless. They've got mental health problems. They've got drug issues, and they roam around freely. You know, in the old days, people like that would have been picked up and stuck in a home somewhere or in a treatment plant. In Canada, it doesn't work like that. They don't do that anymore. So these people are allowed to roam the streets. I mean, when you say homeless people, a lot of homeless people, Canada actually has help for homeless people. So they do supply housing, and look, there's mixed reports. People say that housing is not great and that there isn't always housing available. I haven't gone into that, but the reality is that they try and look after people that need it. They do. But you have this segment of people that kind of, for lack of a better word, I want to say don't want to be helped, you know, because they are not mentally capable of understanding that they need help. And as sad as it is, these people are around there, and they are the main committers of crime. They are the main ones that cause problems, you know. That, and then I guess you got a little bit of gang things going on in certain areas, but there's not, for the rest, the place is safe. Canada is safe. I mean, we oftentimes don't lock our doors. We forget to lock our doors. We kind of put it this way. You know, in South Africa, we had an armed robbery. We had at the house. We had numerous break-ins. I had a gun pointed at my head. We've had a bunch of issues over the years in South Africa. In South Africa, people that live there know that you are alert, you are sharp, you are looking around, you are always, you are always alert. We don't live like that over here at all. It's actually so funny. We basically, I would sleep at night, me and Belinda would be in bed, and we would hear noise in the house, and we wouldn't even get up to go and look. In South Africa, if I heard a noise, we had 32 security cameras around the house. We had alarm beams through the whole garden and throughout the house, and motion detection and stuff like that. And if that alarm goes off 2 o'clock in the morning, I would be in the safe, pull out the gun, pull up the cameras, check if there's anything. I mean, that's how we lived. And maybe we were maybe we were overreacting, but hey, I tell you one thing. When you have 4 people that don't give a shit about your life, hitting you over the head with a gun and sticking a gun in your face and slapping your kids around, you know, call it PTSD or whatever you want, but you do actually, it has an effect on you. It does. So yes, maybe we overreacted, but it is what it is. We used to we used to be on alert. It was such a pain in the ass. That's one of the reasons we left South Africa, is because, now we've got all of the security systems, and then you have the neighbor's cat jumping over the wall, tripping the motion sensor, the alarm goes off, in the safe, gets the gun, grab the gun, everybody up, checking what's happening, everything's safe. Okay, no, it's a false alarm. Put everything back, go to sleep. A couple of hours later, some big bird would fly across a beam and trigger it, and we never slept through a night. I don't sleep through a night nowadays as well, but that's because I have to wake up to go and pee, not stress related or crime related. But anyway, so yeah, over here we hear a noise at night and we look at each other and we're like, it's probably just Connor, and we go to bed. We have none of that tenseness, that always on freaking alertness. We don't have that. And it took a long time. I think it took Belinda about a year to get over that. I mean, she's still not entirely over that. She will still at night go and check that all the windows are closed and that all the doors are locked, and she still has a little bit of that, which is probably a good thing. Let's not get too comfortable, I guess. But yeah, I think that's definitely one of the main amazing things about moving to Canada, is the fact that security-wise, we don't have that. We don't have that stress. We don't have that monkey on our back of always being worried about what's going on. And the other thing is obviously also the kids. I mean, Angelique and Connor, Angelique specifically, she's a social butterfly. So, I mean, she would jump on the bus and go visit her mates. So we'd check on her, and she's down in Burnaby or she's on Bowen Island, and it's all public transport. She's fine. Look, you get a few nutters on the buses, but not violent, not threatening. It's just, you get a few people that are not all firing on all cylinders. So yes, you do have some incidents on the bus. I think that's it's one of the main reasons Connor doesn't like riding the bus. He does it. He used to do it all the time, and he got on the bus once and going back from school to our previous house. So he sat on the bus, and then there was this older lady that got on the bus, and she came and sat next to him, and she started talking to him. Now, Connor is not a very sociable person. He's not, he's not as open to chatting to strangers as Angelique is. And she started chatting to him, but it kind of went weird, because she was like, yeah, you have a lovely aura, and you are this and that, and then she starts going and saying I'm not a pedophile, and even though I was in jail, I am not a pedophile, and things like that. She scared my poor kid, so he actually got off the bus and at a few stops earlier than he should, and just walked the rest of the way home, because he was not entirely comfortable sitting next to this old lady telling him that she's not a pedophile. So anyway, so yeah, you do get people like that on the bus. You get some weird people, some strange people, but generally not threatening. So yeah, the freedoms. The kids have the freedoms. They go and visit their mates. They hang out. I mean, Angelique's now 16. She's got a curfew of 11 o'clock at night on weekends, and I think 8 o'clock at night on weekdays. And it's like when we were young. I mean, my parents never knew where I was. We went out and we played, and we just had to be home by a certain time, and it was fine. They didn't sit there at home worrying about where we were. And it's the same with our kids. I mean, it's we don't sit and stress about what they're doing or where they are. We just know that they're fine, and they've got the freedom to move around and do things. So that's amazing. That is definitely amazing. Another thing that's amazing about Canada is the nature. I mean, we love it here. Now, I know, look, I love the bushveld as well. It's beautiful. But I love water, and Canada is just so awesome. There's a lot of water, beautiful mountains, you got the snow. It's just enjoyable. It's absolutely, especially in where we are in Vancouver, there's absolutely amazingly beautiful nature around. And the forests and things. And I believe that it does have an influence on your psyche. So when you walk around in these beautiful forests, you feel closer to the earth. You feel, it's nice. I enjoy it. That is really a cool part of it. And then, of course, some of the other things that some of the other reasons we made the move, or some of the other main reasons we made the move, is to give our kids the opportunity to be able to go other places in the world. I mean, let's face it. A Canadian passport counts a lot more than a South African passport. There are so many places that you can go to. There are so many places that you can visit without having to go jump through the hoops and get all the visas. You can go work in other countries. So the world, although it seems like globalization is the pendulum is starting to swing the other way again, where people are becoming more protectionist, the world is still a really big place. And I want my kids to be able to choose where they want to go and make it easy for them. They want to go work in the UK, or they want to go back to South Africa, or they want to go wherever in the world they want to go. I want to make it easy for them. And I think a Canadian passport definitely does that. It does help them, does give them the ability to go more places in the world easier. And then, of course, the reality is that compared to South Africa, there's a lot more jobs and there's a lot more opportunities out here in Canada. Canada is the second largest country on earth. It's got 40 million people. It doesn't have a huge border problem, i.e., so you don't have a lot of illegal immigrants coming in. There's work. It's got a humming economy, and there's not quotas as such. So in other words, you don't run up against the thing that your color or your race is going to count against you for finding a job. And let's face it, it is the reality in South Africa. South Africa, a lot of things go around quotas, and we are very focused on it. And I get why. I mean, don't get me wrong. I get why. It's 90% of the people in the country is black, so 90% of your staff needs to be black, and you've got all these BE initiatives and things like that going on, and it's fine. We have to try and rectify the situation, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of people in South Africa, and there's also a lot of illegal immigrants in South Africa. So in other words, there's a limitless amount of people coming into South Africa, and there just isn't enough work. So if you are sitting with a quota system, the reality is that the opportunities is going to be smaller. You go apply for a job, they are going to look at it and go, oh, well, we've got 50 people applying for the job, and we have a quota system, so as a white person, you're not necessarily going to get the job. So, as a parent, what I have to do is I have to make the decision and give my kids the ability to easily find a job and get away from that, I guess. It is what it is. It's not because I disagree with it. I mean, at the end of the day, you just got to do what's best for yourself and your family. So, yeah, opportunities in Canada is obviously amazing. Also another thing that you got to keep in mind is that in Canada, you are closer to where stuff happens. Not everything happens in Canada. A lot of development and a lot of things happen in the US. There's a lot more money available. There's a lot more funding for innovation and for new technologies and new startups and stuff like that. And this is closer to the core out here in the West, Canada and the US and Europe. I mean, let's face it, in South Africa, there's a lot of really, really amazing, smart people in South Africa, but there's not a lot of money in South Africa, and there's not a lot of resources in South Africa. So while there are amazing inventions coming out of South Africa, a lot of inventions die. A lot of things die in South Africa purely because there's just not enough funding to drive it forward. I mean, it's just not comparable. Plus, of course, you know, over here you've got a market. In South Africa, you've got what? Financially viable market of maybe 8 to 10 million people that can buy stuff. You know, whereas if you combine, or financially active people that have enough money to buy or to use your service or whatever you want to call it. Now, if you look at the US and Canada, you've got access to a market of what? 350 million in the US and 40 million in Canada. So that's a total of about 390 million. And there's a much smaller difference between haves and have-nots. You know, in a poor person in Canada is doing a lot better than a poor person. A poor person in Canada or the US is doing a lot better than a poor person in South Africa. It's just the way it is, you know. There's a big difference between having a low-paying job doing rubbish collection in Canada and doing rubbish collection in South Africa. In Canada, you can still live off of that, and you can still be a consumer. You will still buy stuff off of Amazon and things like that, whereas in South Africa, just not. So you've got a much bigger market that you can address if you have any business ideas or anything. And that's why a lot of innovations, when people come up with something great in other countries, they move over here because this is where the money is. For how long, we don't know. You know, we had Africa is growing fast, and the African market is growing fast, and the community is growing fast. Africa is an amazing continent with some huge resources. So who knows, maybe in future it changes. But for right now, your actionable or accessible market is much bigger over here. So if you have an idea, this is easier to get it done over here, I guess. So yeah, opportunities, lots more opportunities out here in this side of the world. All right, and some of the other things that are amazing in Canada is Amazon, or deliveries in general. I mean, it is so amazing that you can, you know, you can sit on your couch and decide you need something, and you jump on an app and it gets delivered. Now, I know you got there's Take-A-Lot in South Africa, and I haven't been there long enough recently to know how well Take-A-Lot works. But I do have the one thing that I love about Amazon, and Amazon in Canada works great, not as great as in the US, where it's even better. There they come and deliver within hours in some cities like Tampa, where we live, but still. The beautiful thing is that the delivery arrives, they drop your parcel on your front porch, and when you get back from work or wherever you were, your parcel will still be there and you can pick it up. Now, I'm pretty confident that doesn't happen in South Africa. Well, it didn't used to when I used to live there. If you left something outside, it will not be there when you get back. So it is, consumerism is the amount of things that you can get here. And I know things have changed, I guess. When I was a youngster, I used to love electronics, and it was always such a pain in the ass to try and get like parts or electrical parts. There were 1 or 2 companies in South Africa that imported them, and it was like hard to get things. Whereas nowadays, or those days in the US, you could go to, you know, they were just so much more available. And I feel like it's still the same, although I mean, with globalization, South Africa has now got access to a lot more things than it used to, but still, it's definitely the fact that you can get anything you want at any time you want over here is amazing. Even if you have to order it from the US, because that's where I went now. I went to go and pick up some parts that I needed for Connor's car. Ordered it off of eBay, got delivered to my mailbox there, and I just went and picked it up. You just got access to so much stuff. And I know some people are going to call it consumerism and blah, 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 but it is what it is. It is amazing. Okay, the other thing that's great about Canada is the political system. Now, I know I made a video the other day where I spoke about politics and there also being corruption and things like that. And I don't actually agree with everything that the current Canadian government is doing. You know, me becoming a Canadian, I'm going to live here and I have a right to have an opinion. But having said that, at least I feel like politics in Canada still functions the way like that democracy was intended to function. I mean, the reality is that nothing is perfect. A democracy is also not perfect. You can have everybody be wrong and only one guy be right, you know, when you look back at things. But the reality is that it is still functioning kind of in the way that it was intended to function. 8 years ago, the Liberals flipped the government from the Conservatives. They took over. And the way things are looking at the moment, at the next election, it's probably going to flip back. And why? Because the people were like, well, we're not happy with what these guys are doing. We're going to vote other guys in to take over from them. And that is how a democracy should work. People should be able to change the government if they don't like it. Now, you know, back in South Africa, that's never really going to happen. There's such a unbalanced seat of power with the ANC that the fact is that, I mean, Jacob Zuma stole billions and billions and really caused a lot of heartache to the whole country under the ANC, and yet the ANC still got voted in afterwards. No matter what they do, they will always get voted in. And that's, you know, not the way that the democracy is intended to work, I suppose. I guess that's the bottom line. The other side of the coin is that in South Africa, I am worried for the day when the ANC loses their outright control, because what will happen then is that they're going to be forced to make a coalition government with the EFF. And, you know, as I said in my other video, that's not always the greatest solution when you have a minority, a more extremist minority party that becomes the kingmaker. Look at the NDP in Canada. Look at the Green Party in Germany, and you know, many other examples throughout the world where you have a minority party that is a minority party because they are more extreme and they have more extreme views, but they become the kingmaker, and because they are the kingmaker and the other party can't rule without them, they get to force a lot of their ideals through. So, I mean, can you imagine if the ANC has to make a deal with the EFF? The EFF has got some radical ideas and they're going to start pushing it in. So, you know, there's that. So politics, yes, it's not perfect, but at least in Canada, I feel like when I am a citizen one day, I can make a difference, which is important. I did not have the same feeling in South Africa. And once again, I might be wrong, but I didn't. Another thing we need to talk about is medical. You know, we spoke about cost of living a little bit earlier, or I spoke about cost of living a little bit earlier. And yes, accommodation is expensive, food is expensive, things like that is expensive, but we don't pay medical. Medical is free. We don't pay for security, so we don't have that, which are things that in South Africa used to be a good cost. Schooling is free. I mean, it doesn't. I spoke to people that I know in South Africa now, they're paying something like 20,000 Rand a month per child just to keep them in school. I mean, that is crazy. So yes, while housing is expensive and a few other things are expensive, there are also things that we don't pay for here, which you kind of have to over there, which makes a big difference. So yeah, anyway, what I wanted to talk about was medical. Look, there are problems with the medical system in Canada. Can't deny that. It's still great. They will look after you. You will get treated. If you're sick and you need it, you're going to get some of the best help that's available. If you're not very sick, you might end up waiting for a bit. And there's been issues in the recent past where emergency services took longer than they had to, and hospitals got clogged up because there's not enough staff, and it's a number of reasons. A lot of it, I think, comes from the COVID days, actually. Still a COVID hangover. But the reality is that if you are sick, I've spoken to so many people, people that I know. Some of you on the channel have commented. If you really need it, you will get help, and you will get help fast. I mean, somebody I know on Gabriola Island thought he was getting a heart attack, and he went to the little local medical center there, and before you know it, they had a chopper over there to fly him out to Victoria, to the hospital. You get looked after, and that's all free. There's no cost, which is a lot better than the US, because if something like that would happen why are you flipping? All right, well, I'm going to have to carry on like this now because I'm driving. The camera just flips for some reason. Anyway, so it's a lot better than the US, because in the US, if you had something like that happen to you and you have to pay for it, it costs an arm and a leg. In the US, you need medical insurance. There's a bunch of that, whereas over here, you don't have all of those costs. But yeah, there is a problem with the medical services. You struggle to find a house doctor. You struggle to, if it's not serious, they're not going to jump on it, and they're not going to look after you very quickly. Things that kind of sucks a little bit. In South Africa, if I woke up and I felt fluish or sickish, I would just call the doctor. I will get an appointment. I will go there. I will wait. I mean, every doctor, we're used to it. The doctor's offices, you wait. But you maybe wait half an hour what the doctor sees you, and you get your medicine and you go home and booked off or whatever, and you get treated. Here it doesn't work like that. I mean, to get an appointment with a doctor, you've got to make an online appointment, and then the first appointment, you can only first do a tele appointment where they will call you at a certain time. If you want to do an in-person appointment, you want to be seen, it takes you can't get an appointment the same day. It doesn't happen. Up to 2 weeks ahead before you can actually even see your doctor. So if you wake up and you're not feeling great, don't think you're just going to call your doctor and get it sorted. It just doesn't work like that. And they got some of these really stupid things over here. Like, in South Africa, when I see the doctor, I'm like, oh, I'm feeling a bit coughy, but at the same time, I've got this thing on my toe, and I've got you go to the doctor and you speak to the doctor about everything that's wrong, and the doctor, helps you. Over here, if you set an appointment to call the doctor because your toe hurts, you can't at the same appointment ask him about your freaking headache or the flu or anything else. You are only allowed to speak to him about one thing on that call. You need to make another appointment for the other one, which is just mind-blowingly stupid if you ask me. But anyway, it is what it is. It's free medical care, and it's very good medical care if you really need it. There are places. I mean, you can go to emergency. You're going to wait a while. We've been to emergency room a number of times. Before we had a house doctor, Angelique had a couple of issues where, what was it? Yeah, she had some sort of infection, or she was sick or something, and she was really not feeling well. So we went to the emergency room, and you sat there for 3.5, 4 hours, and then you get seen, and then you get treated. And then you also have, apart from the emergency rooms at the hospitals, you do have walk-in clinics, and some of them are great. You go sit there and you wait for a while, and you are going to wait for a while, but you get treated. So that's the thing with medical over here. You will get treated. If you tell your doctor you've got a sore back and you want to get a scan done, you're probably going to wait like a month or 2 months to actually get the scan done. It's not going to happen fast. But it will happen at some stage. I suppose. So yeah, medical, not absolutely brilliant. Banking is great, except for the fact that the whole EFT system hasn't caught on. I think South Africa is a little bit more advanced as far as banking goes. I suppose South Africa also had to deal with a few more, there's a lot more crime. You had to be sharp in South Africa to stay away from it. I mean, back in South Africa, they don't do checks at all anymore. Checks doesn't exist. They cease to exist. In Canada, I still get payments through checks. I still wait for the mailman to get checks. Although a lot of people have now moved on to the EFTs or the fund transfers, or most people pay their bills by credit card nowadays. The invoices for our publishing for the books gets paid with a credit card, because they've got Interac here, which is the funds transfer system. And Interac has got this like little weird thing that it only allows you to do a maximum of $3,000 a month. Now, some people have a max limit of $2,000. The bank tells me the max that you can do is $3,000 per day. So that means I cannot actually pay my rent in one sitting, because my rent is $4,000 a month. So I have to pay $2,000 on the 30th and $2,000 on the 1st. It's mind-blowing. I cannot do or I need to write a check and give a check to the landlord. Mind-blowing. I cannot do a transfer for my full rent payment, which is weird. But apart from that, the banks are great. Everything else works. You can receive money, you can send money, you've got your cards, your credit cards. I mean, everything these days are on cards anyway. So yeah, that's brilliant. Shops, sure, you've got a wide variety of stuff available. I mean, that's one thing. You can get anything from anywhere in the world really over here. Groceries, the best place to buy your groceries if you live here to mitigate the cost of groceries and the cost of living is Costco is your friend. You just got to go to Costco. Go to Costco, go and pick up once a month or twice a month, go and pick up bulk groceries. We buy our meat there, we buy our chicken there, we buy our mince there, we buy our ketchups there, we buy all of the staples over there. We buy bread and milk from the local grocery store, but everything else really we get at Costco because it's just so much more cost effective. It's so much cheaper. So yeah, Costco will be your friend when you are over here. Everything else, there's a couple of South African stores for the South Africans coming through. There's there's one in Richmond, there's one in Burnham, in North Vancouver, there's one in, now I forgot the place, out there Port Coquitlam side, and there's one Serengeti out in Langley, which is the biggest and probably the best one. And then we've got the South African shop online where we deliver stuff. So if you are here and you want to get some of the South African goodies, you can get that very easily as well. A lot of South African stuff are actually available in the grocery stores now, like Mrs. Ball's chutney and things like that. You can actually just buy at your local IGA. Boerewors you can buy at your local Loblaws and your local IGA. Not the best boerewors, but boerewors nonetheless. So everything is available over here. It's one of the cool things. Although sometimes I think there's too much choice, but hey, it is what it is. What else is there? Sorry, I've spoken so much while driving, I've kind of forgotten what I've covered. My memory's not that awesome anymore, I tell you that much. All right, folks, but I think I'm going to sign off on this one. I'm almost back home. So it was a long trip. I hope I didn't waffle too much. You all must have a good one. Cheers.